I woke up early in the morning, the sunlight streaming through the small window of our apartment. My three daughters, Lily, Sophie, and Mia, were still fast asleep, their tiny bodies tangled together in a mess of blankets and pillows. I smiled as I watched them sleep, their peaceful faces a stark contrast to the chaos that often filled our lives. As a single mother, it wasn't easy. My husband had left us when Mia was just a baby, and I had been on my own ever since. No child support, no help, no nothing. Just me alone, trying to make ends meet. But I was determined to give my daughters the best life possible, even if it meant sacrificing my own happiness. I got out of bed, careful not to disturb the girls, and began getting ready for another long day of work. I drove a taxi, renting a car every month, and picking up passengers from all walks of life. Some were kind, some were rude, but I never let it get to me. I had a job to do, and that was to provide for my family. As I drove through the city, the sun rising over the skyscrapers, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. I was doing this all on my own. I was providing for my daughters, giving them a roof over their heads, food on the table, and clothes on their backs. Sure, it wasn't the life I had envisioned for myself, but it was the life I had, and I was making the most of it. The day was long, the traffic was bad, and the rain was pouring down. I picked up passenger after passenger, navigating the crowded streets with ease. But as the evening wore on, the weather grew worse. The wind howled, the rain pounded against the windshield, and the roads became increasingly treacherous. I was driving my daughters home, Lily sitting in the front seat, Sophie and Mia buckled up in the back. Mia, who was only 5 years old, began to shiver, her small body cold and wet from the rain that had seeped into the car. "Mama, I'm cold," she whimpered, her voice trembling. I turned up the heater, trying to warm her up, but the car was old and the heater wasn't working properly. I glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing Sophie trying to comfort Mia, holding her little sister's hand and whispering softly in her ear. As I drove, the road grew darker and more deserted. The streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the pavement. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my hands shaking with fear. Suddenly, a bright light illuminated the road ahead, and I felt a loud crash. Everything went black. When I came to, I was in the hospital, surrounded by beeping machines and sterile white walls. I tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through my leg, and I fell back onto the pillow. A nurse came to my side, smiling softly. "Don't move too much," she said. "You've been in a bad accident." I tried to speak, but my voice was hoarse and barely audible. "My daughters," I whispered, my heart racing with fear. "Where are my daughters?" The nurse's face softened, and she touched my hand gently. "They're here," she said. "They're safe." Tears filled my eyes as I heard the nurse's words. I wanted to see my daughters, to hold them in my arms and never let them go. A few minutes later, the door opened, and the three small figures ran into the room. "Mama!" they cried, hugging me tightly. I held them close, tears streaming down my face. I was so grateful to have them safe and sound. But as I looked at them, I knew that our troubles were far from over. The doctor came into the room, his face serious. "You have a broken leg," he said. "You need surgery, and you'll need time to heal." I felt a wave of panic wash over me. How would I take care of my daughters? How would I pay the bills? The doctor's words seemed to echo in my mind. "You need to rest." But how could I rest when I had so many responsibilities? As I lay in the hospital bed, I couldn't help but think about the car accident. The car I had rented was destroyed, and I had hit an expensive car. The owner of the car wanted $20,000, a sum that seemed impossible to pay. I felt like I was drowning in debt with no way out. But then something unexpected happened. My story spread on the internet, and people began to read about me and my daughters. As my story spread online, many kind-hearted individuals began to reach out and offer their support. They sent messages of encouragement, prayers, and even donations to help with the medical bills and other expenses. It was overwhelming to see so many strangers come together to help me and my daughters. One particular message caught my attention. It was from a kind stranger who wanted to help me in a more substantial way. He introduced himself as Mr. Thompson, a successful businessman who had been touched by my story. He offered to cover the medical expenses and even provide a place for us to stay while I recovered. I was hesitant at first, unsure if I could trust this stranger. But as I spoke with him, I realized that he was genuinely kind and sincere. He sent his team to the hospital to take care of the paperwork and arrangements. They even brought warm clothes and toys for my daughters, which brought tears to my eyes. A few days later, Mr. Thompson visited me in the hospital. He was a tall, kind-eyed man with a warm smile. He sat beside me and held my hand, telling me not to worry about anything. His team would take care of everything, from the medical bills to finding a new home for us. As promised, Mr. Thompson's team paid for my hospital bills and arranged a beautiful house to be rented for us. It was a dream come true, having a safe and comfortable place to live with my daughters. The house was spacious, with a big backyard where the girls could play. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, knowing that we had a roof over our heads and a place to call home. But Mr. Thompson didn't stop there. He also helped me with my business dreams. I had always wanted to open a supermarket, and he offered to help me make it a reality. He connected me with investors and experts who could guide me through the process. It was surreal, going from struggling to make ends meet to having the opportunity to start my own business. With Mr. Thompson's support, I was able to open my supermarket in a few months. It was a small store, but it was mine, and I was proud of what I had accomplished. The store quickly became a staple in the community, known for its fresh produce and friendly service. I was finally able to provide for my daughters in a way that I had always dreamed of. As I looked around my new store, I felt a sense of gratitude towards Mr. Thompson. He had changed our lives in a way I never thought possible. My daughters were happy and thriving, and I had a sense of purpose and fulfillment. I knew that I would never forget the kindness he had shown us, and I hoped to pay it forward someday. The experience had taught me that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. And sometimes that hope comes in the form of kind strangers who are willing to lend a helping hand. I was grateful for the kindness of strangers like Mr. Thompson, and I knew that our lives would never be the same again.